Good morning, everyone. I am Katasha Edwards, and I want to welcome each of you here to our session 2 in our Leader Professional Development Series, Leading the Charge for Evidence-Based Literacy Practices. Session 2 is entitled Understanding the Importance of Leadership Around Implementation. Here are our Zoom meeting preparation, our little notes and reminders. Make sure that your phone or your computer is muted. Make sure that you turn off your camera to save bandwidth and prevent any connectivity issues. If you have questions during the presentation, you can drop those into the chat. And if you require an interpreter or have any other accessibility needs for future LDO meetings, you can contact LDOE Communications at la.gov. So just in case this is your first leader session and you didn't attend the first session, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am Katasha Edwards. I am a literacy PD specialist here at the Department of Education. I'm a 22-year educator with about 12 years of classroom teaching experience and the remainder of my time as an instructional leader, where I had about 2 years as an assistant principal and the remainder of the time as a building level principal. So I want to thank each of you for joining me here today. I know that the end of June and the beginning of July is game time for our leaders as we begin to make preparations for the new school year. So I appreciate you for joining me in this conversation around literacy practices, the science of reading, and preparation that as leaders, we need to make sure happens. We always begin with our literacy division mission that all Louisiana students will have improved literacy outcomes through high quality instruction and interactions by an effective teacher supported by leaders and families. Our department priority is to provide the highest quality teaching and learning environment from birth through graduation, and our focus area is literacy. So as we go throughout this process, think about your literacy vision and mission for your school or district and how it lines up with the literacy division's mission for literacy. Here is a recap from session 1. And just a side note, all of the teacher sessions and leader sessions that are in this summer series are being recorded, and those slide decks along with the recordings will be placed into our literacy library. So if you missed one of the sessions or you want to go back and redeliver any of those sessions, those resources will be available for you in the literacy library. So in session 1, we defined the science of reading. We gained a clear understanding of the importance of building teacher knowledge around the science of reading. We reviewed the components of the simple view of reading, and we discussed the strands of Scarborough's reading rope and how each strand impacts skill reading. So here's the session focus for today. Today, we're going to focus on the why behind foundational literacy instructional practices. And then we're going to look at some important levers for success that school and district leaders can implement to support their literacy instruction. So as a result of this session participants will have a deeper understanding of the importance of setting and progress monitoring literacy goals at the school, system, and classroom levels, implementing strategic, explicit instructional practices partnered with intervention and extension activities to address all learners, providing and participating in ongoing professional growth opportunities, and engaging families around their child's literacy development at all stages and ages. So let's think about the why. And when I was thinking about the why, we probably could park here and just stay here for the remainder of our time together. But for the purpose of time, we'll look at these 3 bullets that I added to this slide for today. The first why is, and these are just quotes and different information that I found aligned to the science of reading that I thought would set the stage for our purpose today. We know that reading is not simply a desire, that is a fundamental skill necessary for virtually everything that we do. And we need to ensure that all of us, particularly our children, learn to read and read to learn so that they too can do everything. And this was from the American Federation of Teachers, 2020. Academic English is complex, and given the complexity, children need carefully planned instruction to become fluent readers, spellers, and writers. And this was from Dr. Louisa Moats. And this last one really resonated with me about setting the stage for our purpose today, is that all children deserve to learn to read, and all teachers can learn to teach them. So as leaders, like I said, this really resonated with me because we're charged with student outcomes, and we're charged with supporting teachers with their ability to support students in achieving those outcomes. So now we're going to move to the how. These are the levers for success that will support effective literacy instruction. So if you see here on the screen, we have the Louisiana pillars for effective literacy implementation. And I have two documents that are linked here, and they're both in the literacy library, and someone will drop those into the chat for you. It's the Literacy Implementation for Leaders PDF and the Literacy Implementation for Teachers PDF. So the Louisiana Effective Literacy Implementation for Leaders is a concise document that provides strategies that leaders can employ to promote literacy in their schools. So as we continue our conversation today and we look at the how around these effective levers, we're going to use these pillars as our buckets to frame our discussion. So we'll look at the literacy goals pillar, explicit instruction and interventions and extensions pillar, ongoing professional development, and family literacy engagement. We'll look at each of these pillars and the leader actions around these pillars that can support effective literacy instruction. So the first pillar is establishing literacy goals. Our pillar states that student literacy outcomes will increase when schools create and monitor literacy goals. The leader actions around this are to communicate those literacy goals with teachers and other stakeholders, and monitor those literacy goals quarterly to ensure that the actions for the goals are being met. And if you'll see here, and these documents are in the literacy library, the local literacy plan PDF and the school system literacy roadmap plan PDF are two documents that can support you with establishing those literacy goals. In two subsequent sessions during this series, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into both of those documents and look at planning for the upcoming school year. We'll dig into the local literacy plan PDF during our literacy goal setting session, and we'll look at the school system literacy roadmap actually next Thursday as we identify where we are and where we want to go in the science of reading process. When setting your literacy goals, here's some things that I thought were important and that I pulled from that document. You should be sure that you have a literacy team, whether you're at the district level or the school level. You will need to establish a shared literacy vision and mission. And then once you have done this, you're going to develop some overarching goals or intended outcomes around literacy. Then you'll be ready to create some specific goals for grade bands, subgroups, diverse learners, teacher performance, etc. When setting these literacy goals at each level, they should be SMART. They should be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. And within this document, there are some goal frames that you can use when thinking about language to set literacy goals. So our second lever or pillar is the implementation of Tier 1 curriculum with explicit literacy interventions and extensions. Our pillar states that literacy outcomes will improve when students are provided high quality core instruction together with explicit literacy interventions and extensions based on individual student needs. Our leader actions around this lever for success are to create literacy block schedules, ensuring that the time is assigned specifically for core instruction and interventions that are grounded in the science of reading. We need to monitor and observe the implementation of our intervention activities and ensure that we have access to books for students to practice reading skills through classroom libraries, whether these are print books or digital books. We want to make sure that we have resources available for kids to practice their skills. And one thing that I forgot to share on that slide is on this side, you'll see the literacy block schedules document, and it's also in the literacy library. If you want to look at that document, it gives you some more information about creating those blocks around our specific reading strands. But this is what I thought was important when thinking about literacy block schedules. We want to ensure that reading instruction with our high quality curriculum is at least 120 minutes per day of core instruction in K through 2, and at least 60 minutes a day with our 3 through 5 students, and that within those blocks, there is explicit teaching of foundations of language and literacy. Another consideration is for interventions and extensions. These activities should provide at least 30 minutes per day of supplemental instruction and practice time for students who need additional practice or enrichment. And also another thing when thinking about our literacy block schedules, at K through 2 and 3 through 5, our blocks should embed writing instruction throughout that connects to the skills that are being taught and to the content. Our next pillar is the pillar for ongoing professional growth. Ongoing professional growth is an essential component of effective teaching and literacy development. So our leader actions around ongoing professional growth is to ensure that there is ample time for facilitation of learning communities to review student data and track progress. And we will have a session on literacy learning communities coming up with one of our subsequent sessions. And you should provide opportunities for teachers to be trained and receive ongoing professional development on your high quality curriculum implementation and the foundations of teaching reading. So when I thought about this, I thought about it in terms of my lens, and I have 2 teenagers in my household right now. And I thought about like your ongoing professional development on your high quality curriculum is like a car. Both of my teenagers want to drive. So giving them the car is that PD on that professional development. But when we provide teachers with the training or the why behind that curriculum, the training on the foundations of teaching, it's like giving them the keys to the ignition so that they can take that curriculum and that they can make informed decisions about literacy instruction to support students and their individual needs. So I thought that just kind of resonated with me. So when thinking about ongoing professional growth, you should definitely establish literacy experts on your campus to support the literacy work that you're doing, aligned to your literacy vision and goals. Definitely embed literacy conversations into your learning communities. You can complete a book study, a school-wide book study to increase literacy knowledge. I've linked here and someone will drop into the chat the Reading League's list of recommended books around the science of reading. You can listen to podcasts or have your staff listen to podcasts, and y'all can talk about those within your learning communities. And someone will drop a link to Amplify. They're doing a really cool podcast series right now on Scarborough's Reading Rope. So that may be something that you're interested in, and somebody will drop a link to that in the chat for you. Be sure to involve your teachers and leaders in a foundational literacy training and ensure that teachers will receive support to the Tier 1 literacy curriculum that you are using in your school. So as you update your PD plan for this summer and moving into the fall, just be sure that you have ongoing literacy supports as a part of that professional learning. So if you're thinking about, where to begin in terms of professional growth around the science of reading, the classroom literacy instruction based on the science of reading, these are our classroom literacy look-fors document. It's inside of our literacy library. This would be a great series or PD learning community topics for you to utilize as you begin the school year. Within this document, it talks about what teachers should do. It talks about what does that mean and what does it not mean. So we're going to look a little bit at that because during our last session, we had leaders to share with me that they are really interested in those classroom look-fors and what they should be looking for in terms of the science of reading in their classroom. So like I said, this document is in our literacy library, and I think it would be a great place for you to start with your ongoing professional development and your learning community topics as you begin the school year. So let's look at that very first look-for or classroom practice that teachers should use. So under the what should teachers do, they should provide daily phonological awareness activities. So what does that mean? These are the phonological awareness activities only incorporate the sounds and the letters, not the written expression of the letters. These activities are completely auditory and they only require speaking and listening skills. Practicing these skills daily, including working them into the classroom routines and transition times, can strengthen other processes that students need to be able to use, like decoding, encoding, and orthographic mapping. Also in this document, it talks about what these things do not mean. Your phonological awareness activities, they do not include any visual cues. They do not include providing letters or spellings that represents the sounds. They're not boring and they're not rote, and they can be done anytime and anywhere. Students who have mastered basic phonological awareness skills can be challenged with advanced phonological awareness skills, such as sound deletion, substitution, and reversal. Our second classroom look-for is providing systematic explicit phonics instruction. So when you're looking at your classrooms and your literacy block schedules and the instruction that's taking place, be sure that phonics instruction includes the phonemes and the graphemes of letters. They're including, this is where they're connecting the sound with the actual letter, a combination of letters that represent those sounds. Phonics instruction advances from simple to more complex while spiraling in connected skills. And rather than only teaching phonics from a certain story, it's important that our teachers are using systematic and explicit phonics instruction to improve the overall comprehension of our students. Something that they should not do, or what it does not mean, teachers should not wait to introduce phonics in response to a perceived student weakness. Teaching reading and spelling should follow a specific process, linking the graphemes, these are the letters, to the sound, to the phonemes, rather than promoting memorization, repetition, or using ineffective strategies like rainbow spelling. Our next look-for is using the process of orthographic mapping to teach decoding and reading. Now, orthographic mapping is when students make connections between the phonemes, which are the sounds, and the graphemes, which are the letters. During this process, it's stored in the brain, and the reader advances from being able to decode and blend words to automatically recognizing and reading the words. The process of orthographic mapping is very interesting to me. And I just think of it in terms of the three processes that successful readers use to become more fluent readers. Students use their oral language processing part of their brain to make connections or map the sounds or words that they already know to the letters in the words. So it's important that we see that. When thinking about what does it not mean, it means that reading requires multiple areas of the brain, the language processing area. Research shows that students learn to read and shows that visual strategies such as cueing, using a cueing system, flashcards, color coding, these are ineffective at sustaining fluent reading. Another classroom look for, and these are all in this document, is to look for the use of decoding skills to provide the foundations for reading. Teachers should start with phonemes, which are the sounds, and add the graphemes, which are the letters, to build and read words. They should master sound, spelling, correspondence first. Teaching meaning is also important as a part of this process. The next look for is teaching using letter sound correspondence. When you're in those classrooms, you used to see teachers teaching reading that focuses on the sounds and the spellings of words. Fluent readers have strong understanding of the letter sound correspondence and the phoneme grapheme mapping. What you should not see is that teachers are using visual cues such as look at the picture to help you, or what makes sense here. This can lead to confusion and guessing, and these processes fail to strengthen students' ability to decode. The next look for or classroom process you should see is practicing skills with decodable texts. Decodable texts that contain words that have been taught during the phonics lesson, along with high frequency words, improve the students' reading, automaticity, and fluency. That's what you should see. And with level text, often many words that do not follow the phonics patterns or have been explicitly taught do not provide adequate practice with the taught decoding. Our next classroom instructional practice is that you should see teachers using practices that increase fluency through automaticity. And automaticity is when readers can recognize and read words on sight after the process of decoding and blending. This is the result of fluent and accurate reading. This is where we see those students that have really strengthened those word recognition skills. We should see this practice within our classrooms. The next one is a big one. It's using sound walls instead of word walls in your classrooms, and as you support your teachers with effective practices around literacy instruction, you should see sound walls. Sound walls, they help with reading and spelling by representing all 44 of the sounds rather than just the 26 letters. Sound walls support students in reading and retaining unfamiliar words on their own by promoting sound and spelling correspondence. And in thinking of word walls only promote the beginning letter of a word, which may not match the sound. Our last, well, we have two more. You should see the building of sight vocabulary through sound space instructions. And when we think of sound words, we're not thinking about our normal just Doge sight word list. Think of sight words as any words that readers can learn to recognize on sight after systematic phonics instructions. We should connect high frequency words to graphophonemic patterns that have been previously taught. Our next look for is that we need to be sure that we're letting diagnostic assessments drive instruction. Diagnostic assessments provide teachers with specific skills that effectively guide individualized instruction for readers. These assessments measure phonological awareness, phonics, decoding, fluency, and comprehension. So when thinking in terms of that literacy screener or other diagnostics assessment that may be utilized with your curriculum, making sure that we're using that data to drive the instruction for our students is an important classroom look for. The last classroom instructional practice that's shared on this document is we need to be sure that we arrange small group instruction by specific skill needs. So we need to be sure that our teachers are analyzing that diagnostic data and focusing on specific skill areas where readers may need to be more proficient and where they're ready to advance to another skill. So I know we spent a little bit of time looking through this document, but I just saw the value in us walking through it together. So as you go back to your literacy teams, that you're able to, pull this document, look at these classroom instructional practices, look at the curriculum that you're using and seeing how these practices are embedded within that curriculum and how your block schedules are set up and the alignment to these instructional practices. Our next area that we're going to look at is the role of families, and that's our last lever or our last pillar. And we know that families play an essential role in the literacy development of children at all stages and ages. That's what our pillar said. Our leader actions around this pillar are to engage families in providing literacy support for their students. On the department's website, you'll see a plethora of family engagement literacy resources. We want to make sure that we're using those, and we want to connect with the community and other community programs to maximize access for all families. The Family Literacy Strategic Plan for schools and school systems can be found in the Literacy Library. In terms of engagement around your literacy processes and practices, the Strong Family Literacy Engagement Framework is a great place to begin. We want to make sure that resources are accessible, that they're using multiple modes of communication, that they're inclusive, that we're making those resources available in home languages and respecting cultural differences, that we're proactive, that we're sending out notifications timely, and that we're avoiding any unintentional exclusions, and that they're visible, that they're on our websites, they're in our call outs, that we're reaching out to keep the communication lines open with our families. So lastly, and I know we're close to time, I want to make sure that within all of our sessions that we're doing a Science of Reading Spotlight. So just in this process, making the shift to the Science of Reading in your school or district, you'll see linked here two Amplify Reading podcasts that I listen to them when I'm driving. I listen to the ones on the Reading League, but these are two that I listened to this week. When you're making the shift to the Science of Reading in your district, be sure that you're building your professional knowledge base around the Science of Reading first. That you're thinking about what the research says and how you can connect it to practice and how you can support teachers with connecting it to practices. Identify what resources that you will need, any materials, teacher knowledge capacity, the progression of skills that teachers will need to support them in this process. Be sure that you're looking at your literacy data and you're using that to drive, that you're identifying where specific student need is supported, where it's needed. And then once you do that, we need to identify what the adult behavior should look like based on our data and based on the Science of Reading. Be sure to review your foundations blocks. And I know we have middle school people that have joined these calls. Let's make sure that even when we're scheduling for middle school students, that we're including some remediation time for even our 6 through 12 learners who may be struggling with the Science of Reading. And begin with self-evaluation and identify where you would like to begin. So here's our reflection questions for today. And these are some questions that you can use with your literacy team and your leadership team as you guys plan for this school year. Think about the pillars for effective literacy implementation for leaders. What areas do you need to focus on as you prepare for the upcoming school year? And then the second question is, as leaders, we're responsible for student learning and adult learning. So think about your adult learning processes that you have in place aligned to the science of reading for this year. And then think about the current instructional practices within your school or district. How do you think reading instruction could be improved? So if you will, take a few moments and someone will drop it into the chat. Our session feedback for today, if you will give us some feedback as we map out subsequent sessions. I did want to also make a note that, we planned this initial session and I did hear from you guys. And once we finish this initial series that we have planned, I want to be sure that we do something for our middle school leaders around supporting middle school students with struggling readers. If you have questions or suggestions, you can email me at katashaedwards@la.gov or louisianaliteracy@la.gov. And I see some feedback about the session feedback form not working. So I'm going to grab that and drop that into the chat because I really want to make sure that we get feedback on this session. And I really want to thank you guys for attending today. And I think someone dropped it in. Thank you for attending today. I know that you are super busy. I really, really, really do appreciate your literacy leadership and that you have time to spend with us as we go throughout these conversations. And thank you for joining me. I look forward to us having beyond this series opportunities for us to engage in dialogue. As we go throughout the school year, we'll have opportunities to engage into some communities of practice where we're able to share. I think back to my time as a leader, and I know that some of the most impactful opportunities are when you're able to engage with other leaders. So we want to make sure beyond this series that we set up opportunities for us to engage together as we build out these conversations.